Hi, this is Dave with Market Trading Concepts, closing out the week for Friday, August the 10th, 2012. I'm recording this video on Saturday, August the 11th. Let's take a look at the market, starting out with the Dow Futures as we usually do on the daily chart. So we had an interesting week on the Dow Futures closing out this week, and what you can see is the price action. We had this pullback here, and then we had, so this would be Friday. We had Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So as you can see here, Monday was a tight doji day, and we didn't really give much back from Friday's strong close here. Friday had a very, very strong close right at the top of this range here. And then you can see here we're just all week we've been slowly grinding higher on fairly low volume, and on Friday we came up here this past Friday right up to these highs. So the situation that we've been looking for with a retest of these intermediate highs from April and May seems to have played out. So now that that's kind of done and out of the way, well, what's going to happen next? Well, you can never really know what's going to happen in the market, but from the perspective of where the evidence is pointing us to, you can see where the trending indicator here on the daily chart looks good, and you've got the price action holding the 8 EMA up here. The tough call is really like, I wouldn't try to anticipate what's going to happen here. I think what really needs to unfold and what we need to be looking at is, let me just zoom out a little bit here. There's, here we have the highs. Okay, and if I zoom out the chart a little bit more, you can see how important these levels are in terms of, back in here, and now we're right up to them. Well, there's kind of a saying here, like you can only knock on support or resistance's door so many times before you're going to make a move through it. So here you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you've got a fifth try right over here. Now, for that reason alone, I'm kind of expecting us to sort of move through these highs. Now, this is a really tough call because I'm not sure that we're going to get one of these situations where we're just off to the races, or if we could get a situation like this. But I'm going to look at this in if-then scenarios. And what I mean by that is if we break up above this 13,200 level in the Dow Futures, if we break up above there, that is one scenario. Okay, so let's say one scenario is we break above the highs and we just kind of, off to the races. That's one potential scenario. I would be looking at that break and then a potential pullback wherever either this rising support or potentially this trend line or the breakout point come together. So in other words, if we break up above here, I'd be looking for a pullback somewhere into where the 21 exponential moving average is rising, and the price action might come down and touch it, or the trend line, or back to this breakout point. Now, you could have a situation where it does one of these as well and then comes right back down. So I'll be watching for that as one potential scenario. The other potential scenario I'll be watching for is that we just kind of peter out here and then pull back down pretty hard into support. Either this trend line or this 21 exponential moving average, or a confluence of the two, and looking to see if it holds this level and then pushes off. So the other scenario might be that we don't even chew through this yet and we put in a higher low, and then we see from there if that higher low holds, and then we push off and break through these highs. So that's another scenario. The other scenario, of course, is that we could just come down and put in like a triple top, we could put in like a sort of like a triple top and then just fail miserably. That is another potential scenario. I'm really more leaning towards that's a bearish scenario. Now I'm more leaning towards the bullish scenario for the simple reason that we've got our trending indicator bullish. We have a market structure in place where we have a series of higher highs and higher lows, and that is the basic definition of an uptrend. So until and if that scenario changes, whereby let's say we come down here and we break these lows, put in a low point, a lower high, and then do one of these, and we can't put in a higher high, then that would change my scenario, to the bullish, or I'm sorry, rather the bearish side. But until and if that situation takes place, I'm not bearish on this market. I'm more bullish than bearish. But we're at really critical levels here, and these critical levels, anything can happen around these levels. You could trigger off stops and just explode. You could, you could just, the buyers are done buying for the time being, and we just get a normal pullback and then a push off. A number of things can happen here. So at this point in time, I'm more bullish than bearish, but I'm going to watch and see what the market decides to do. I'm not going to try to anticipate where this move will go, because these sort of major levels are areas that are they're kind of where the rubber meets the road and line in the sand kind of areas. So I'll just be watching this carefully and looking to see what happens. So let's take a look at the sister indexes and see if we have the same sort of scenario taking place as well. So then looking at the S&P, we have much the same scenario. We're up and around these highs, right in and around here. We're a little bit further away from these specific highs in the middle of March, close to the end of April. So we're a little bit away. We're about 10 points, 9 or 10 points away from an actual test of these highs up here. But we're basically, kind of chugging along the same path there. So now let's take a look at the Nasdaq and see if we're in the same situation or not. So we can see here, looking at the Nasdaq, that the Nasdaq is following suit, but it is definitely lagging behind the S&P and the Dow Futures. So Nasdaq following suit, but it is a little bit more laggy in terms of where its recent highs were, that it kind of needs to come up here and test. So everything else looks very similar from chart pattern perspectives, except that it looks like the Dow's the strongest, the S&P is the second strongest, and then followed by the Nasdaq, which is the weakest. So now let's take a look at the transports and see what's going on there as well. So here's a chart of the daily transports, the transports on the daily chart, and you can see here you've got this sort of wedge pattern happening as well, but the transports are not really confirming either way. They're still sort of stuck in this wedge here, and if we extend this to the left, you can see where that kind of comes into play. But you've got sort of this coiling action, this wedge pattern, but the transports are right in the middle of their range. They're not really confirming either way. So this is sort of a bit of a red flag, and it's a little bit interesting that all three indexes are moving in the same direction, and the transports are, they're just kind of sitting here, smiling and just not doing anything. So this is a little bit of a red flag. I'm going to keep an eye on this, a little bit of a cautionary note. So now let's take a look at the same markets from the Darvish squeeze perspective and see if they're giving us any other clues. So let's take a look at the Dow Futures on the daily chart. We have this Darvish squeeze that fired off in and around this level back in here. Geez, I can't even read that because it's so congested rather. But it's around 13,000, 12,000, 12,000. Okay, well that makes it easier. I just drew a horizontal line there. We're at 12,940. That's kind of where the Darvish squeeze fired off back in this area. Target is somewhere up and around potentially 13,364. That would bring us above the highs. The immediate resistance is around, we closed at 13,172. The immediate resistance is between 12,200 and 13,200 and 240, if memory serves correctly. So we're within 100 ticks of those targets for the recent highs. So this signal is still in effect. You've got everything here that bullish. You've got your Hakanashis are blue, bullish. The squeeze fired, squeeze momentum is bullish. MACD is bullish. The volume's a little bit light, except for this bar here. Volume's a little bit light. Trending indicator in our favor, bullish. So everything's kind of firing on all cylinders there from an indicator standpoint on the daily chart. But now this is the thing that I'm really watching here. Let's take a look at the Dow Futures now on the weekly chart from the Darvas squeeze perspective. This is really what's caught my eye. This is really a key thing here. So we've got this Darvas box forming here on the weekly chart. These are weekly bars. So you can see last week we were basically just accumulated up to the highs. And this week we were just kind of really tight right below this Darvas box. So you can see this Darvas box here and this Darvas box here. You can see these levels coming into play, but what's really key here is you've got the Hakanashis are blue, right? And then you've got a weekly squeeze that's fired. Now you've got a weekly, you've got a weekly Darvas. This is very painful to write with a mouse. Weekly Darvas squeeze that is getting ready to fire. This is really, really key. Now what can happen here is you can get a breakout and a pullback, but ultimately if this follows through, this could take us up beyond the highs and could take us somewhere, up into over 14,000 on the Dow. So this I'm really watching. I've been mentioning, I don't like this divergence in the trending indicator, but everything else is sort of, other than this divergence here. I don't know how important that is or if it will play out, but this looks, it looks like we're either going to put in a triple top and fail, or we're going to get a weekly Darvas squeeze firing that is going to potentially follow through. So I'm really watching this. If this weekly Darvas squeeze fires and follows through, I'll just say FT follows through, we could get a potentially big move in the stock index futures led by the Dow. So I'm going to be watching this really closely. This is a multi-week event that is setting up and could play out for multiple weeks. So, you've got these Hakanashis blue, squeeze fired off long. The MACD is starting to cross to the high side. It's above its zero line. This is the only cautionary note here, is this trending indicator. So I'll be keeping an eye on this. This is really key. Watch these weekly charts to see what the macro direction setting up is. And, I'm going to be trying to trade in the direction of the weekly chart because that is really where the major pressure is. So the Dow chart was really the chart that I've been focusing on. Let's take a look at the S&P on the weekly and the daily. The daily chart fired off a signal, and it's still a valid signal that is still playing off on the long side. The weekly chart looks much the same, except we do not have a Darvas squeeze on the weekly chart. We're just kind of coming up and testing some of these levels. On the weekly, on the Nasdaq, we have a daily Darvas squeeze that fired off on the Nasdaq daily chart here. It's still kind of playing out with targets a little bit higher up. The weekly chart is neither in a squeeze, but it is in a Darvas box and is approaching these Darvas box highs back here. The Darvas box looks a little bit different. You've got this kind of divergence here as well, but everything else kind of looks good. for a potential retest of those highs at least. And then, we'll see if we get a move higher out of those areas. If you look at the transports, and then I want to kind of wrap up this video. If you look at the transports are doing nothing. They're doing absolutely nothing. They're in the middle of their Darvas box range on the daily chart. They're in the middle of their Darvas box range on the weekly chart. They are they're slightly negative on the MACD here, below the zero line on the daily, but on the weekly they're hugging the zero line on the weekly. So, the transports at this point in time are not confirming. We'll have to see where everything kind of settles out next week. I'll be looking at next week's weekly close as a clue as to where we might be headed in the near future. That's all I've got for this week. Just in summary, keep an eye on those weekly charts, especially the weekly chart of the Dow for a heads up. It seems to be leading the stock indexes, the stock indices. Keep an eye on that weekly chart. See if we're going to get some strength to new highs on the daily and the weekly, and we'll just be keeping an eye on the market and seeing where we close out at the end of next week. We have a potential multi-week move setting up, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on it and go from there. I'm personally not going to be too eager to take any swing positions either way, because we are at those key kind of resistance levels and those key retest levels. I'm going to kind of let the market tell me what it wants to do, not anticipate it, and then see if there's an entry opportunity based on what it decides to do. So I really don't want to take a position right at the front lines of those highs. I want to see how the market kind of settles out, reevaluate. We'll look at the markets again next week and figure out what makes the most sense. So I hope this video has been helpful. I'll look forward to seeing you all at the next meetup or at the next video update. Have a great rest of the weekend.